All right, now we are going to be moving on to place value to 10 million and into the decimals to the 10,000ths with rounding numbers. Rounding numbers in general make numbers easier to work with and are especially useful when we don't need a specific amount. We can round numbers to various places depending on what we need. If we need a more exact number or a more estimated number. We use rounding also to make calculations easier or to estimate our results. Take a moment with your elbow partner. Can you think of any real life examples of where rounding numbers could be helpful? I'm sure you came up with shopping. Shopping is one of the most used answers when it comes to rounding. Oftentimes you don't have to know the exact amount that you need for your payment, but you need to know that you have the right amount. So generally saying we overestimate when we're shopping. So for example, say you have $15 and you want to buy toys that cost about $3 each. You round up a little bit, so each toy is $4, just so it's easier to calculate. How many can you buy without running out of money? So 4 groups of 3 is 12, 4 groups of 4 is 16, 4 groups of 3. So shopping, we almost always use rounding, and we generally overestimate when we are working with money. That means we round up. Because we would rather think the cost is more and make sure we have enough money than assume the cost is less and then not have enough money. Time. When we're traveling, we often round numbers up. So for example, say you're going to a birthday party, Google Maps says it's going to take you 26 minutes to get there. Just to make sure you're not late, because who wants to miss a party? You leave with 30 minutes to get there. So another place that we often estimate is time. When rounding whole numbers, so that's numbers to the ones place, you look at the digit in the place value to which we are rounding. So if we're rounding to the ones place, or to the tens place, excuse me, we would look at the tens place. And then we would look at the value next to it. So if it's 5 or more, we generally round up, which means we add one more. If it's 4 or less, we generally round down, which means we actually ignore, and that number stays the same, and the other numbers become 0. So let's see what that looks like. So say we were rounding 75 here to the nearest 10. Well, 7 is in the tens place. So then we look at the 5. The 5 is 5 or more. So then we add one more. The one we add to is actually the 7. So the 7 becomes 8, and anything after that place value position becomes a 0. Okay, let's try it with a 4 or less example. Here we're going to round to the hundreds place, which is the 1. The 1 looks at the 3. The 3 is 4 or less. So the entire number rounds down, but that 1, actually we just ignore. It stays the same. So the 1 stays the same. We replace the others with zeros. So technically my number has gone down. 100 is less than 132. All right, you're going to pause and you're going to copy this. This is our rounding rule. So first thing we want to do, we want to mark our place. So what place value position are we rounding to? In this case, it's the tens. We look next door, and it's always to the right. So in this case, we look at the 8. If it's 5 or greater, we add one more. If it's 4 or less, we just ignore. Because here 8 is greater, that means we add 1 to the 6. The 6 becomes 7. So my new number is 27. The numbers in front stays the same, so the 2 stays the same. The 7 is the digit we changed, and the numbers behind become a 0. So my new number is 270. Now, when we're rounding decimal numbers, it generally works exactly the same. If the next number in the place value is 5 or more, we still round up. If it's 4 or less, we still round down or ignore. So for example, here we have 10.66 or 10 and 66 hundredths. We're rounding to the tenths place, which means it's the 6 that we're looking at here. Oops, sorry. It's the 6 we're looking at. This 6 looks at the other 6. That tells us we add one more, so that becomes then a 7. The numbers in front and the decimal stay the same, and the numbers after can become a 0. Now with decimals, adding the 0 on the end actually doesn't change the value, so that 0 is optional. You can leave it, but you don't have to. All right, your turn on your whiteboard. Go ahead and give it a try. First set, we're rounding to the tens place. Let's try that with our elbow partners. Pause and try that with your elbow partner now. All right, let's see how we did. Okay, so in 625, I'm rounding to the tens place, which is the 2. The 2 looks at the 3. The 3 is 4 or less, so I just ignore. My 2 stays the same. My 6, which is in front, stays the same. And my numbers after become 0. So 620 would be my new number. For 231, the tens place is the 3. I look right next door. It's a 1. 1 tells me just to ignore. The 3 stays a 3. The 2 in front stays a 2. And the digit after becomes a 0. And lastly, we have a 2. Looks at the 7. Oh, the 7 is greater, so that means we have to add one more. The 2 becomes a 3. The number in front stays the same, so the 4. And the digits after become a 0, so it rounds up to 430. All right, press pause and try this next set with your partners to the hundredths place. Press pause and do that now. All right, let's see how you did. So the hundredths place, so we've got the 3 in the hundredths place. The 3 looks at the 6. The 6 tells me to add one more, so that's going to become 4. Now I have 2 digits after they both become a 0. So this would round up to 400. Let's try the next one, 422. So again, I'm looking at the hundredths place, so that's the 4. I look at right next door, which is the 2. 2 tells me just to ignore, so the 4 stays the same. And again, the rest become zeros. And my last one to the hundredths place is a 5 here. Looks at the other 5. The 5 tells the other 5 to round up to 6. So it becomes 6, and the 2 digits after become 0, 600. All right, with your elbow partners, try this last one, rounding to the thousands place. Press pause and do that now. All right, let's see how you did. So the 2 is in the thousands place. It looks at another 2. The 2 tells it to stay the same or just ignore, so 2. And now I have 3 digits after, so that means I have 3 zeros, so rounds down to 2,000. This then would be considered an underestimate because it is lower than the actual. Let's take a look at this next one. 9 at the front. Looks at the 3. The 3 tells us to ignore 4 or less, just ignore, so that means 9 stays the same. And those digits after, there's 3 of them, 3 zeros. So again, another underestimate. Last one, we have a 2 in the thousands place. It looks at the 5. The 5 tells me we're going to add one more, so that's going to become 3. And then again, 3 zeros after, 3,000. This one is what we call an overestimate because my number has gone up. It's increased. All right, not much changes with decimal numbers. So we're going to try some decimal numbers now. Now you're going to go to the tenths place. So with your elbow partners, try that first set, rounding to the tenths place. All right, let's see how we did. So the tenths place is the 8. The 8 looks at the 6. The 6 tells the 8 to add one more, so that's going to become 9. Decimal 0 in front stays the same, and decimal the 0 after, remember, is optional because that's actually an equivalent decimal. 0.9 or 0.90 is an equivalent decimal because 9 tenths is the same amount divided differently as 90 hundredths. All right, let's try the next one. 6 is my tenths. It looks at the 3. The 3 is 4 or less, so I just ignore. It stays as 6. Decimal 0 in front stays the same. I can add the 0 to the end. I don't have to for a decimal digit. Last one here looks at the 7. 7 looks at the 6. The 6 adds one more. The 7 becomes 8. Decimal 0 in front stays the same. And again, that 0 in the end isn't really necessary. All right, press pause and try with your elbow partners questions 13, 14, 15. All right, let's see how you did. So again, tenths, so 4 looks at the 1. The 1 tells the 4 to stay the same. So 4 decimal and the 4 8 in front also stays the same. Again, you can add that 0. You don't have to. It actually does not change the value. If it's specifically asking for the tenth, it's probably best if we just get rid of it because we want to be in the tenths place. Next one, 8 looks at the 4. 4 again tells us to ignore. The 8 stays the same. Decimal and whatever's in front stays the same. So 51 decimal 8 or 51 and 8 tenths. Last one, the 2 in the tenths place looks at the 7. The 7 tells us to add one more. So 2 is going to become 3. Numbers in front, including the decimal, stay the same. 82 and 3 tenths. All right, next set with your partner. Now try going to the hundredths place. Press pause and try 7, 8, and 9. Okay, let's see how we did. So the 4 is in the hundredths. The 4 looks at the 8. The 8 tells the 4 we need to add 1. So that becomes 5. 2 stays the same. Decimal 0. So the placement of the 0 and the decimal do not change. That stays as it is. And again, we could add a 0, but technically we want it in the hundredths place, so I would suggest we don't. Next one. Excuse me. 3 looks at the 9. The 9 tells us we're going to add 1, so that's going to become 4. 9 decimal 0, that part in front stays the same. 94 hundredths is my new number. And last one, again a 9 looking at a 7. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. That means we're adding 1 to this one, which means we're adding 1 to this one, which means we're adding 1 to that one. So that actually becomes 1 decimal 00. That one was tricky. All right, let's try the second set with your elbow partner. Go ahead and press pause and do those ones now, also to the hundredths place. All right, last set, hundredths place, 4. 4 looks at the 9. 9 is 5 or more, so we add 1 more. That 4 becomes a 5. 7 decimal 5 8 in front. Just going to write it underneath because that little blank is a little bit too small for me. 58 and 75 hundredths is my new number. Next one, we've got the 8 in the hundredths place. It looks at the 9 in the thousands place. The 9 tells the 8 to add 1 more because it's 5 or more, so that becomes 9. 2 decimal 4 6. Oh, I forgot. 64 decimal 29 or 64 and 29 hundredths. Last one, a 9 again. Looks at the 9. The 9 adds 1 more, so again that's 10. That's too much, so we have to add 1 more over here. So then it becomes 60 decimal 98. Those stay the same at the front. Again, you can have 89 decimal 6, but if we do want it in the hundredths, we do want the 0 there. Okay, now you are off to practice on the pages given. Away you go.